So, what does happen when the world's two largest economies, these global powers, find themselves really increasingly at odds? Today, we're taking a deep dive into the evolving relationship between the United States and China. It's a dynamic that has truly become, well, a defining feature of our geopolitical landscape. We're going to try and navigate a stack of recent reports, legislative actions, and academic analyses to unpack the key issues shaping this crucial connection.
Right, and our goal today really is to dig into that and pull out the crucial insights about the U.S.-China relationship. We're specifically looking at the contested status of Taiwan and the widespread human rights abuses reported in China's Xinjiang region.
Yeah, and we'll explore how these issues have kind of solidified a bipartisan consensus here in the U.S. and, what that actually means for both sides.
Exactly. Get ready for some maybe surprising facts and those aha moments that hopefully leave you feeling well-informed but not totally overwhelmed.
And we have some really insightful material for this deep dive. Things like detailed excerpts on the persecution of Uyghurs, the political status of Taiwan, recent U.S. congressional press releases, and some pretty in-depth analyses of U.S.-China relations.
Mm-hmm. These sources, they offer quite diverse perspectives and, importantly, crucial details that help paint a vivid picture of these, let's face it, very complex challenges.
Okay, so let's unpack this first part. For years, the U.S.-China relationship, it was seen through different lenses, right? Partnership sometimes, competition, even collaboration on certain things. But something significant has clearly shifted.
Yeah.
What's the big picture here, according to our sources, regarding how the United States views China now?
Well, what's really striking, I think, is how strong the bipartisan agreement has become in the U.S. Congress, especially since around, say, 2017, 2018. China is now largely perceived as a strategic competitor across almost every domain you can think of. Geopolitical, economic, technological, military, and ideological, too.
And that's not just talk, right?
No, not at all. Our sources show this isn't just rhetoric. It translates directly into concrete legislative action and definite policy shifts.
That's a huge shift in perception we're talking about. But it probably didn't happen overnight. This reevaluation, it wasn't just about, say, economic competition alone. It seems rooted in a whole series of events that really highlighted China's global ambitions and its internal policies.
That's right.
What were the specific turning points, according to the material, that really solidified this bipartisan view?
Well, several key developments sort of converged to create this consensus. We're talking about things like massive theft of American intellectual property, China's pretty aggressive challenge in cutting-edge technologies like 5G.
Right, 5G was a big one.
Huge. Then the launch of the U.S.-China trade war, and also China's wolf warrior diplomacy, that much more aggressive, kind of confrontational style of foreign policy we've seen, often paired with economic coercion against U.S. allies.
Okay, so IP theft, tech challenges, trade wars, aggressive diplomacy. What else?
Well, beyond that, there's the perceived shift in China's geopolitical strategy towards global expansion. Then the revelation of mass human rights abuses in Xinjiang, which, as our sources really stress, sent shockwaves worldwide. And also the establishment of China's first overseas naval base in Djibouti back in 2017. That was seen as a significant move. What's really insightful here, I think, is how these, seemingly separate developments didn't just irritate Washington. They cumulatively forced a fundamental reevaluation. It shifted the U.S. from a policy more focused on engagement to one of strategic competition.
A real change.
A big change, yeah. In a way few might have predicted maybe a decade ago. It wasn't just one trigger, but like a perfect storm that brought about this bipartisan consensus.
So the American approach to China isn't just about one issue then?
No, it's a broad reevaluation.
And speaking of those interlocking factors, you mentioned human rights. The shift in U.S. policy isn't just about geopolitics. There's a strong moral component, particularly concerning what's reportedly happening in China's Xinjiang region. The reports coming out of there have been, well, devastating.
They really have.
From the sources, what are the most profound aspects of the alleged abuses that maybe struck you the most?
That's a critical question. The sources describe a really systematic persecution of Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslim minorities there. Since about 2014, the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, has allegedly engaged in, well, a whole range of things. Mass arbitrary arrests, detention, torture, mass surveillance, cultural and religious persecution, forced labor, sexual violence, and violations of reproductive rights.
It's a chilling list.
It's an incredibly comprehensive and disturbing picture painted by these sources.
Can you give us some more specifics, like about the camps?
Yeah, the specifics are harrowing. what China officially calls vocational education and training centers. Well, these have reportedly incarcerated over 1 million Uyghurs without any legal process. And as of April 2024, our sources estimate another, roughly, 449,000 Uyghurs are imprisoned in formal prisons.
Wow.
Former detainees describe inhumane conditions, forced indoctrination, being taught things like religion is opium, you must believe in the Communist Party, and methods of torture including electric shocks and something called iron clothes. There are also deeply troubling reports mentioned in the material about mass deaths in these facilities.
And you mentioned reproductive rights violations earlier. The sources seem to highlight that as particularly stark. How widespread are those allegations?
Absolutely shocking, according to the reports. Policies reportedly include forced sterilization, forced contraception, and even forced abortions. Chinese government statistics, which are cited in our sources, they show birth rates in Uyghur regions like Hotan and Kashgar falling by over 60% just between 2015 and 2018. 60%. And then another 24% in 2019. This contrasts sharply with the national decrease in China, which was just 4.2%.
That's a massive difference.
It really is. And a common reason given for detention in some areas was reportedly violation of family planning policies. One exiled Uyghur doctor even claimed in the source material to have performed 80 forced sterilizations a day.
80 a day? That's just horrifying to contemplate. Beyond these physical and reproductive abuses, what about the cultural and religious persecution?
Yeah, the sources detail the destruction or damage of tens of thousands of mosques. The estimate cited is around 16,000.
16,000 mosques?
16,000. And hundreds of thousands of children have reportedly been separated from their parents and sent to state-run boarding schools. The government actively discourages traditional Islamic attire like headscarves and veils, and has even made it illegal to give children certain names deemed to exaggerate religious fervor, including common Islamic names like Muhammad.
So attacking the very identity.
Exactly. And it's not just cultural destruction. The Xinjiang region is tragically described in one source as a cotton gulag, where prison labor is present in all steps of the cotton supply chain.
Cotton gulag.
Yeah. Reports indicate at least 80,000 Uyghurs were forcibly removed for labor in factories across China. This includes cotton picking, but also critical minerals industries. By 2021, the number relocated for forced labor programs was apparently over 600,000.
Given these incredibly severe allegations, how has the international community responded? And what's China's counter-narrative?
Well, many international bodies and governments have reacted strongly. The U.S. Department of State, legislatures in Canada, the Netherlands, the UK, Lithuania, France, they've declared China's actions as genocide. Others use terms like severe human rights abuses or crimes against humanity. There was one New Lines Institute report cited that argued China breached every single article of the Genocide Convention.
Strong condemnations. And China's response.
China, for its part, actively denies all allegations. They mount quite expensive propaganda campaigns, dismiss accusations as complete lies, they attack the character of witnesses, and sometimes use pre-recorded monologues from people alleged to be relatives of detainees. They also employ what's called transnational repression to try and silence dissidents and activists abroad, basically, extending their reach to harass or coerce individuals even outside China's borders.
So denial and pressure. What tangible actions have the sources highlighted that the U.S. has taken in response to these specific human rights concerns in Xinjiang?
A significant step highlighted in our sources is the Uyghur Policy Act. That's H.R. 2635. It passed the House Foreign Affairs Committee on April 9th, 2025, with strong bipartisan support.
Okay, what does that act aim to do?
It aims to coordinate U.S. efforts better, empower advocates, increase accountability for the CCP, and support the Uyghur diaspora, specifically by addressing that transnational repression we just mentioned. It shows a commitment, really, to move beyond just words. As Representative Young Kim stated, and this is quoted, "By staying silent, we become complicit."
Okay, so from human rights to territorial disputes, the complexities are just immense. And just as troubling as Xinjiang is the contested sovereignty of Taiwan, this remains a highly volatile flashpoint in the U.S.-China relationship.
Absolutely.
What's at the absolute core of this issue that makes it so precarious?
Well, if we connect this back to the bigger picture, the core is Taiwan's political status. Is it an independent sovereign state, or is it, as Beijing claims, an inalienable part of China? The People's Republic of China, the PRC, views Taiwan, formerly the Republic of China, or ROC, as merely a local authority, and they explicitly state they will not rule out military force for unification.
Okay, and how does the PRC define the triggers for using that military force. Are there specific red lines mentioned?
Yes, the PRC's anti-secession law from 2005, it lays these out pretty clearly. Triggers include if Taiwan officially declares separation, or if some major event happens that leads to separation, or simply if all possibility of peaceful unification is lost.
So those are the stated conditions.
Those are the stated conditions for potential military intervention, yes. Now, on the other side, you have the ROC, Taiwan. They argue they possess all the characteristics of a state. The ROC has existed since 1911, and crucially, the PRC has never actually exercised control over the island or its 23 million people. Supporters of Taiwanese independence often assert the island is already a sovereign state, formally known as the Republic of China. And public opinion polls in Taiwan, cited from 2009 and 2013, showed a significant majority identifying primarily as Taiwanese and favoring independence over unification if the current status quo wasn't an option.
So a distinct identity is really formed.
Very much so. It highlights that distinct identity emerging on the island.
Okay, so what does all this mean for the U.S. position then? It's often described as the one China policy, but that term itself can be pretty confusing for a lot of people.
Indeed. And the real aha moment here, and honestly the source of ongoing tension, lies in the deliberate ambiguity of the U.S. one China policy. What this means is the U.S. acknowledges but does not recognize the PRC's claim that Taiwan is part of China.
Acknowledges but doesn't recognize.
It's a subtle but absolutely crucial distinction. It allows the U.S. to maintain unofficial relations and provide military assistance to Taiwan under the Taiwan Relations Act. It's basically a diplomatic tightrope walk. It lets the U.S. support Taiwan without formally endorsing its independence, a precarious but flexible balance that both Beijing and Taipei are constantly testing.
And the official U.S. stance on use of force.
The U.S. stance, as stated, is clear. China is expected to use no force or threat to use force against Taiwan, and both sides should refrain from performing actions or espousing statements that would unilaterally alter Taiwan's status.
Looking at the military and diplomatic chessboard now, what are the current dynamics and pressures affecting Taiwan, according to the sources?
Well, militarily, the balance is seen as continually shifting towards mainland China due to its rapid modernization program. U.S. strategists, they view Taiwan as a vital component in its island chain strategy. That's basically a strategy aiming to contain potential Chinese naval expansion by controlling key choke points in the Pacific.
Right.
And there was a stark warning cited from Admiral Philip Davidson back in 2021. He warned that China could take military action on Taiwan sometime in the next 6 years. That really underscored the urgency from a military planning perspective.
And the U.S. response capability.
Well, the U.S. Navy practices surging carrier groups for rapid response, which indicates a level of preparedness for contingencies. Diplomatically, though, China's one China principle dictates its relations, and this has led to a declining number of countries formally recognizing Taiwan. Recent examples mentioned are Honduras and Nauru switching their recognition to Beijing. So the diplomatic pressure is constant.
Okay, so it seems these two major issues, human rights in Xinjiang and the contested status of Taiwan, they aren't really isolated issues, are they? How do they intersect and shape the broader U.S.-China relationship, especially given that bipartisan consensus we talked about earlier?
That's a really important question, how interwoven these seemingly separate issues actually are. The human rights abuses reported in Xinjiang, they aren't just seen as humanitarian concerns by U.S. lawmakers, according to the sources. They're also viewed as signals of the PRC's, quote, sense of impunity, and potentially the model of governance it might seek to export.
So it reinforces the competitor view.
Exactly. It deepens that perception of China as a strategic competitor across the board, not just, economically or militarily, but ideologically, too.
And it sounds like the economic relationship, particularly trade, has also become tangled up in this broader strategic rivalry.
Precisely. The economic relationship, which was once looked at primarily through the lens of mutual gain, has really transformed into a site of geopolitical contestation. Trade policies, things like tariffs, efforts at what's called selective decoupling in sensitive sectors like semiconductors and AI, these are now viewed as tools of strategic rivalry, not just pure economic policy.
And human rights factor into trade now, too.
Increasingly, yes. Human rights concerns are getting entangled with trade. This sometimes creates tension, the sources note, between maybe the executive branch's focus on economic deals and Congress's broader strategic and human rights concerns.
And this bipartisan consensus on China that we keep coming back to, does it seem durable? Especially given how politically divided the U.S. can be on other things.
It seems remarkably strong, despite that polarization. Our sources indicate that perceptions of China as a major foreign threat, one seen as capable and willing to challenge U.S. leadership, have actually led legislators to, quote, shelve partisan politics and cooperate on substantive legislative responses. It suggests a potentially long-term shift in Washington's strategic outlook, not just a temporary phase.
Wow. It really sounds like a deeply complex situation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No easy answers anywhere. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the frankly harrowing reports of forced labor and human rights abuses in Xinjiang to the incredibly delicate balance of power and diplomacy surrounding the Taiwan Strait.
Indeed. We've seen how those alleged human rights abuses in Xinjiang, the mass detention, forced labor, the reproductive rights violations, are really compelling the world to confront China's actions. And simultaneously, the contested sovereignty of Taiwan, it remains this highly volatile flashpoint shaping diplomatic strategies, military strategies, really globally.
And the U.S. response, as we've discussed, characterized by this growing bipartisan consensus, it highlights a fundamental shift, really, in how Washington perceives and engages with Beijing.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener, trying to make sense of it all? Understanding these intricate dynamics, it isn't just about abstract geopolitics, is it?
No, not at all.
It's about recognizing the profound impact these issues have on actual human lives, on global supply chains that affect us all, and really on the future of international order. It's clear the relationship between the U.S. and China isn't merely transactional anymore. It's become a profound ideological and strategic contest that touches almost every corner of the world.
Yeah, and maybe here's a final thought to consider. If the pursuit of national interests by these global powers can lead to such profound human rights challenges on one hand, and such serious geopolitical tensions on the other, what responsibility do individuals and maybe international bodies bear in advocating for universal values, especially when faced with powerful state denials and, let's be honest, significant economic pressures that discourage speaking out?
That's a heavy question.
It is, but it's a question worth continually exploring, I think.
Yeah.